You good with the projector? Let me know when you got it centered. Another picture. How's that? Oh, a picture. I'm sorry. I can give you something else to look at. Does that work? White balance looks pretty good. Turn that off. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Build or Buy. This is our first time in about a month. I want to thank everybody for being here. Happy Valentine's Day. Nick Streeter is not going to be here. I thought he was. He's taking care of his wife today. Joe Winnery is supposed to be here after a while. I think he went to do blood work this morning. I spoke with Joe Winnery yesterday, and man, does he sound a whole lot better. So I'm looking forward to seeing Joe. His daughter's bringing him. Is that right? Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. I appreciate everybody being here. I want to ask you guys, please be sure and sign up on the list. We've got a couple of cards back there, one for Joe, I'm thinking of you, and also one for Jack Hamilton. I understand Jack has had some health issues. I've tried contacting him. I haven't had any response on email. And I contacted, I think, Daryl. I had asked Daryl. So Daryl, if you're watching, let us know how Jack Hamilton's doing. We'd like to find out about him. So anyway, we got a card. Please be sure and sign those. And please be sure and sign the registry. We got several things I want to get to today. Some stuff that you might want to take some notes on, some things I think we'll all benefit from. Some of this stuff going on with Windows. Some of this crazy stuff going on with the hardware situation. A couple of trade shows coming up that'll kind of help us keep mind what's going on right now. And I think before I get into all that, I got a message over here from Greg a while ago. Do you prefer Greg or Bill? When I see the Bill, that's why it's confusing. Okay. I got an email from Greg. In fact, I asked him to send this to me about another one of these little scam problems. Did any of you guys get a call in the last couple of months from Apple? Anybody get a call from Apple? I had several calls 3 days in a row from Apple. Kind of freaked me out. I looked at the numbers. I checked, found out they were Apple, called them. My Apple iCloud account had been compromised. My Apple iPhone had been compromised. And another store, I was trying to buy something from Apple. I don't have anything from Apple. I don't have an iCloud account. I don't have an iPhone. For those of you that know me, I have a stupid phone. I don't have a smartphone. So I thought it was kind of strange. They gave me a number to call back. So I went and looked up the number they were spoofing, and I called the Apple, and they were like, "We didn't call you. Stay on the line, though, because we want to know the number that you were supposed to call back." They got one of them stopped. But for about 3 days, I had 3 different numbers, and they kept changing. It was freaky. So this brings us down to the next one. This is what Greg sent me. And if anybody sees something like this pop up on your screen, do not do what it says. This says support.windows.com. Internet security alert. It gives a code. I haven't had a chance to look it up yet. But typically when you get a code from Microsoft, especially like a blue screen, you get like 5 zeros and a bunch of other stuff on it. It talks about internet security alert. Your computer might be infected by harmful viruses. Please do not shut down or reset your computer. The following data might be compromised if you continue. Number 1, passwords. Number 2, browser history. Number 3, credit card information. Number 4, local hard disk files. These viruses are all well known for identity and credit card theft. Further action on this computer or any other device on your network might reveal private information and involve security risks. And then here's the kicker. Here's the number. Call Windows Technical Support. It's an 877, and I'm not sure where that's at. Like I said, I haven't had a chance to look this up. 266-5296, toll free. That's mighty big of them. If you call that number, and then it says prevent this page from creating additional dialogues. If you call that number, you're going to get some yahoo that wants to charge you money, and what they want you to do then is to give them access to your computer, which you absolutely do not want to do. So if you see something like this, don't do it. Now, like Greg did, what'd you do? Pull the cable? Pull the plug and turn it off. Yeah, I'd pull the plug too. This reminds me of the one, I believe it was about November of last year. Big, beautiful screen pops up, full screen. I'm on the browser. I'm looking through Firefox, and it looks official like Firefox. And it says, click here to get this update. And I'm thinking, boy, that looks real, but that sure is strange. Because usually you get the updates when you call up the application, you do the help about. And so I did a screen capture, and I've had that happen to me twice, but I haven't seen it since November. And I showed you all that back in November. And now here we've got this. You know, some of these folks, if they would just get a real job and leave the rest of us alone, it's nice to know about this, it's nice to share it, and I'm going to do some research on this later. The site I like to go to for checking phone numbers is the 800 Notes. It's pretty thorough, and if nobody's made a comment, they'll at least give you some idea where the area code's from. But I check that on a regular basis. There's a couple others. Spokio, I think, is one that's not too bad, but usually 800 Notes is where I go. But anyway, moving on. Oh, yes, Ed.
Yeah, I got.
Can we get a mic on Ed, please, so we can hear him? Mics are coming. Thanks, Robert. Let's flip that over because I'm going to put a camera on Ed. I want to see him. Yes, Ed.
Yeah, I got that same Microsoft warning. And of course, if you just try and click on the X to get rid of it, the screen, it reduces it in size. And
but it's still there?
Yeah, and if you click on the X again, it blows it up to full size. You cannot get rid of it normally.
Is this coming up in the browser?
I don't know where it comes from, but I was able to just call up Task Manager
and kill the process.
And kill the process to get rid of it.
Was it killing the process of the browser?
It killed the browser too, yes.
I'm wondering if they're doing this in a cache.
It happened twice over a period of a week or so, but it wasn't on a continuous basis.
And there was no website you could tie it to?
No.
That's curious. Because this brings up the next point. Greg said he had this once when he was looking at Yahoo and Amazon, which makes an interesting point thinking about Amazon. Have any of you guys ever seen an account get hacked on Amazon? Yeah, that's kind of freaky. I'm going to go to Amazon, I'll pick something, and I'll show you what I'm looking at and how I found out about it.
It happened to me on Yahoo.
On Yahoo?
Twice, yeah.
I can understand on Yahoo, but I was really surprised that Amazon they've had their index page hacked. But having internal pages hacked, having an account hacked, I was really surprised. Robert, do you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, in my own mind, nobody will ever contact you and say, you've got a problem. So that's my default position, is that anything that comes up and says, hey, is trash, and more than that is dangerous. So if I'm wrong, then I guess I'll miss a notification. But
I think you're right.
All the scams that I've ever seen, Microsoft will never contact you. I don't think my bank will ever contact me. So anybody trying to contact you is trying to screw you. That's my message.
Trying to take advantage of you.
Trying to hook you.
I'm going to take a look at a Sanus HDMI cable, for example. I use these cables, I like them. Okay, I'm looking at a vendor, and I'm thinking, okay, here's a particular product. This is just off the top of my head. I need something that has more vendors. Somebody pick a product. Give me something. Anything you'd look for. Hard drive, maybe? Let's look for an M.2. I need something that has multiple vendors so I can show you what I'm talking about. Let's try this one. Let's see if we have multiple vendors. Okay, we have multiple vendors. I'm going to go to the link right here for used and new, which would be the same thing on the right as it is here at the bottom. So I'll go over here on the right, used and new. And what I'm looking at are the list of vendors. And this is where I found an account that had been hacked because there was a product for a company that I had been interested in, and I was not aware of anybody else selling that product. This particular vendor said they had this product used. And I'm thinking, okay, this could be used because somebody used it for a project and now they don't need it. I'm interested in it. If you'll notice where it talks about price, condition, and delivery, Somewhere under here, and it shows a vendor that I've never heard of. Somewhere in here, it had an email address that was contact something something, but the email address was broken up. You had to put it together. You could see it, you could read it, but it was broken up so it wasn't just a click on email address. That's what was my first indication that there was something wrong. So I didn't use that email address they said contact us about the product on. I went through, like clicking on the vendor, went through their little thing using the Amazon service to do email with, and contacted the vendor that way. Within probably 3 days, that particular product was pulled. And I thought, well, that's curious, it must have sold. Then about 30 days later, I get an email from the actual vendor saying our account had been hacked. And I thought, well, no, that's curious, because I didn't know this vendor, and I was real leery of that particular item because it was not something that just anybody would be using. But while I was at it, and the reason I make this point, if I see a vendor that I'm not sure about, I go in and I look at the feedback. And I also try to see if I can get an idea of how long they've been up online doing this. And then I like to go look and see what other kind of products that vendor has. Now, this particular vendor happened to be somebody in Florida who sells resale stuff. You know, those vendors that you bring your stuff in and we sell it for you kind of thing. So I thought, you know, that looks legitimate. But I did not use the email address that was in this area. And a lot of times, the reason I'm showing you this is if I'm looking for a product and I'm trying to figure out who's going to ship this the quickest, this is where I find out. Because, you know, if I go back to the page for the product, it says here, okay, ships from and sold by Amazon. Well, yeah, I want to find somebody else so I don't have to deal with that. So sometimes you can find a seller on here that might be fulfilled by Amazon, and I don't see that right now. So I'm always looking at things like that because I'm trying to figure out who's going to ship this the quickest and who's going to get it to me the least expensive. Amazon's 2-day deal is not always 2 days. Sometimes 2 days to them is 7 days, and they think they're doing a great job, which I don't agree with. But that's how I found out about this vendor, that the account had been hacked. It was the first sign. If you see an email address in here that says, contact us through this email address and it's broken up, don't. That means that account could have been hacked. So I wanted to share that with you. That was not the first time somebody on Amazon tried to take advantage of me, but, you know, first time, shame on me. Second time, shame on you. The first time, a vendor said the product had been shipped and it was on its way. So for 30 days, it was on its way. So finally, I started seeing feedback where other people had been ripped off. So I contacted Amazon, and they didn't even question my claim. They just said, refund done, over with. But it was something I buy, but there was a new vendor that had it. You got to be careful who you're buying stuff from, even on Amazon. Amazon's letting a lot of people on there that may not be selling genuine product. For example, I buy some of Mom's diabetic supplies on Amazon, and they've got labels for countries that I cannot pronounce in a language that I cannot read. So you want to be careful who you're buying from, and for example, if I buy a diabetic product that has a expiration date, I may ask them, what's the expiration date? And part of that is to know the expiration date, but the real reason to ask that is because I want to find out if I contact them, are they going to give me some feedback? Are they going to talk to me? Because if I don't get any feedback, then I don't need to buy from them. If you've ever got a vendor you're concerned about, email them, ask them a question. If you don't hear back from them, stay away from them. So now with that said, did you guys know that Builder Buy on YouTube is now worldwide? We have people all over the world watching our stuff on YouTube. How many of you guys have seen our, oh, glad you're here, Andrew. Glad you made it. How are the ladies? Would you tell them I said Happy Valentine's? That's right. Give them a bear hug for me. Very cool. We have people all over the world looking at Builder Buy. Blows my mind. And one of our goals I told you guys about, I'm going to flip over to that right quick. Let me do this computer here in front of me. We now have 106 subscribers on Builder Buy. My goal was to get 100. Well, I'll tell you the next goal. Because YouTube has made some changes in the way they compensate people who do this kind of thing, we now need to get 1,000 subscribers. So encourage everyone, if you would, to watch us and subscribe so we can get our 1,000. It was difficult getting to 50. It was rough getting to 75. But when we hit 99, it gave me goosebumps. The people that were signing up from all over the world. I mean, we're India, Pakistan, South Africa, and an island off the coast of Madagascar. I don't know why I can't remember the name of it, but we're just all over the place. We've even got somebody in Russia that's watching what we do. In fact, we've got one video up here that's had over 7,100 views. 7,100 views. You think about all the stuff we used to do at How PC. We never had anything at How PC that was successful like that. Kind of blows me away. So even though we may be a small crowd of about 30 here, right now we've got 106 subscribers, and I want to thank everybody for that. And we got a whole much more people online that are watching this. So I hope everybody online realizes this is like two different things we do. One, the live meeting, which is what Builder Buys have been about for a very long time. And two, some of the videos and things we talk about where we can be very, very succinct in our definition and in our description of a product or a situation or problem. And that gives me a segue now into a problem. Oh, yes, Dwayne.
I need help.
Uh-oh. Have you seen the doctor about this?
I have actually several times, but that's a different problem.
Okay.
It's a computer problem right now. My daughter has one of my many hand-me-downs, which is an AMD desktop, which has finally crashed. So I have decided that the easiest thing for me is to just buy her another simple unit. All she needs, and my preference would be something like an Intel i5, the built-in graphics.
Are you looking for a desktop?
A desktop.
Okay.
Desktop. And, she just uses it for email, Word, Publisher, stuff like that. So
Something simple.
something simple. So all I want is a simple machine, an i5 with, say, a 256 SSD and 8 mega RAM. You can't buy it. I mean, I'd love to buy it from someplace like Costco, but they all have their standard machine is a 1 terabyte SATA drive, and I don't want that. I've got some extra ones that I can put in her machine anyway.
You know, it's an interesting question you pose right now because I've always been a fan, build or buy. We build computers. But this cryptocurrency thing right now has got video cards, which I thought were expensive to start with, at a more outrageous price. For example, a video card that I've got in our Ryzen computer, if I want one now, I have to special order it, and I'm going to pay more for it. I'm thinking, well, why didn't I buy a second one back when that was available? I had no idea this was going to happen. It's almost easier right now to buy a computer because of the video card than it is to build one because of the price.
Right, but when it comes to customization, there is so little customization that, I mean, as simple as buying a computer with just an SSD is, I can't find any, and I agree.
Almost any machine that you're going to get, you're going to have to accept that you may have to do that.
Not trying too hard.
Do what?
He's not trying too hard.
Well, good. I'd be happy if you'd give me some recommendations, Robert.
I'll give you a recommendation.
I'm glad you asked. Yes, sir. Go ahead, Robert.
Go ahead and buy that 1 terabyte machine and then buy a 256 SSD for $47 or whatever it is and put it in it and reinstall the back up the operating system to the SSD.
That's the whole idea. I don't want to be her tech support. I want to give her something that she's got a warranty from Costco on and it works, and I don't have to be tech support. I'm getting tired of being everybody's tech support.
I'll show you a recommendation. Go ahead, David. Glad you're here. We've missed you.
So one thing you want to avoid is a computer that has a hybrid drive, and that is a spinning, old-fashioned hard drive along with an SSD that is seen by Windows as one drive.
Those were a neat idea in the beginning.
There's still some out there, and they're still on the...
Avoid them.
Yeah. Now, if you want to go over to Micro Center, they have quite a few of them that have SATA drive, SATA interfaced SSDs. Well, I was just there yesterday and can tell you from experience that there are quite a few.
What kind of price are you talking about?
Well, PowerSpec had one that was about $800. That was a pretty good i7 with two. In fact, that had 2 slots on the motherboard for PCIe interfaced NVMe M.2s.
Yeah, all I need is just a simple SATA SSD is fine for her. That's what she's got now, and she doesn't really need.
Does she have a desktop now?
Yeah, it's this old AMD that I built a long time ago, and the Spectre fixes have trashed it. It's the one you've read about that AMD didn't give Microsoft the right specs on their hardware, so when Microsoft fixed it, it screwed up the AMD, the old AMDs.
Everybody's doing this.
Yeah, and so it's finally crashed for good.
Oddly enough, do you think she might benefit more from a laptop?
Well, I'm going to offer her that option because cost-wise, but she doesn't really travel much around, so she's a housewife, and so I'm not sure that. But I'm just because of the cost, I'm going to offer her that option.
One is the cost, but also the two, you want to get one done as much as it can be done the way you want it, so that, like you said, you're not going to be tech support.
Right.
I want to kind of answer that by going to Costco, since that's my number one place that I prefer to do business with, because that 90-day return policy, which blows me away. Mm-hmm. My number 2 place, of course, would be
Micro Center?
Yeah.
I agree.
But 15 days, 20% restocking or 15% restocking fee. So let me go and show you some ideas, and just kind of let me go to a computer. I'm glad you asked that question. So let's go to Costco. And I always say you change one thing, changes everything. It could be price, it could be the specs. Let's just go take a look at the desktops right quick. Now, the way this comes up, it's going to go price high to low, so we're going to reverse that. Show me low to high. Now that I get the price up, the processor you're not real particular about. Okay, I am particular about the processor, but let's look at what you're looking for first. Here's 8 computers with an i5, so let's see what pops up. A Dell, $600. The HP for $650. So, well, let's look at the hard drive then. 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte. This is difficult to accept because this does not always tell you exactly what's in the machine. A lot of times you have to drill down. This is not as easy to go through the specs as, say, Newegg. Newegg, you can get down to the nuance of what you're looking for. But let's just take a look at this Dell right quick for $600. Now, this has a burner, which she really doesn't need. Let's see it, because usually it'll tell it over there on the right. They're really good with the Dells. Okay, it's a 7200 RPM SATA drive. What we don't know is if the other socket is on the motherboard, and that's what I was trying to look for. Say if we jumped up to this, this is $50 off. Here's a Lenovo Legion for $750. That's kind of nice. That's got a 4 gig NVIDIA, and I'm not sure which one, the GTX 1050 Ti. That's kind of nice. It's a little bit too gamey looking, but for $750, let's see what it's got in it for the hard drive. 8 gigs of RAM. Okay, look at there. 16 gigs. It's got an M.2 PCI NVMe. That's an Intel Optane. That's curious. And then it's got a 1 terabyte hard drive. So, I appreciate the fact that there's an Intel Optane on there, but for what I think she'd want to do, I think you need more RAM than that. So I would kick out and keep looking. So we've got, I don't like those all-in-ones. I think that's too, if you're going to do an all-in-one, just do a laptop. So then we jump up to $1,100, CyberPower. Now this is curious. CyberPower, there's a couple of others that they have that I'm going to look at a different way. This also has a 16 gig Optane. The same video, 8th generation i5, 2 terabyte hard drive. It's got 16 gigs of RAM, 16 gig Optane. Nope, that's going to have to be changed out, and that's what you don't want. I like the brand CyberPower because they've got another computer that I'm going to go back and show you in a minute. Now, we're at the top of the line for an i5. That's it. So let's not just look at a processor. Let's keep price low to high. And let's just see here. 1 terabyte hard drives. See if we can get any more creative here. Sometimes these will have a hard drive and an SSD. And that's what I'm... It's in the laptops a lot of times, but I haven't seen it too much in the desktops. That's why I was suggesting a laptop. Okay, here's one, $950. A Lenovo Legion, 1 terabyte hard drive, 128 gig SSD. Now, think about this. Something that's important, and this is a lesson to learn with this HP laptop. This laptop was $800. Great deal for the time, for the price, bang for the buck. To get this laptop configured the way I wanted it was going to cost $1,650. All I wanted was one thing that's not on the motherboard, and that was the slot for the M.2. I'm not willing to pay $1,600 to get that slot. That's ridiculous. So my point that I'm making with these computers, if there's an SSD on there, even though it's small, that means the socket is on there for now and maybe later. Even though you don't want to be tech support, I'm just saying, don't limit ourselves. So let's go back over here and take another gander. So we're looking at, here's a Dell, the 2 terabyte, and here's a Dell 1 terabyte and 128 gig SSD. So this Lenovo is $50 off. It happens to have an i7 in it. 3 gig NVIDIA graphics. That's even better video, 1060. You know, it's gamey looking, but I wouldn't let that throw you off. Let's look down here at the specs. It's an i7, it's got 8 gigs of RAM. Personally, I think it ought to have more. For what she's going to do, it'll probably do what she wants. Windows Home. But there's your SSD. Now, it doesn't say what kind of SSD. It doesn't say if it's an M.2. We don't know. But it's there.
Gil?
Yes, sir. Yes, Robert.
Are you familiar with computers with that configuration of the SSD and spinning drive? The reason I ask that is I've always maintained you should have a small C drive so it's easy to back up and so on, and don't put anything on it, which is a little bit of an onus on the users to put all the data somewhere else.
Right.
And I'm wondering if they found some way to get into the operating system where the operating system puts everything somewhere else. I've never seen that.
If they have configured it to do that, otherwise they will run out of space because, you know, all applications want to go to C. Now, this Ryzen machine that I have built, that's the way I have it configured. But I have a 1 terabyte NVMe drive in there.
Right.
The
I tried to do it manually once years and years ago. I went and looked up some generic title to see if I could just go to whatever it's called, the configuration stuff, and change from C to D. And it turned out that there was no such thing. There is no generic title for here's where the data goes. And I changed things, but I had to change 20 times. I had to change C to D in the configuration. That's not the right word. I just can't remember what it is.
I understand what you're saying.
You just had to do it manually. So that's very frustrating because if there was instead a symbol or, percent or however it is you specify these things, that means here's where the data goes, it would be so simple then. So I just wonder with a computer like that, with a small SSD is it guaranteed to give you trouble in 6 months because you're out of disk space? Or if you say if they've configured it, how do you do that? How do you configure it?
See, I haven't seen this computer. I'm going strictly on specs.
Right.
But because I got 90 days, I'm willing to give it a shot. If it doesn't do what I want, then I can take it back and start over.
Well, the answer is my wife's machine had 128 SSD, and I didn't even bother to change the setup. You can change that, by the way. What you have to do is you go in and you change the files in the user system to go from their default location, which is on C. You send all those files over to D, for example.
But how do you do that?
You go online and you look it up and you follow the instructions.
Okay.
You can basically you redirect all those files. I did that on one machine.
It can be done.
It can be done, but then I read somewhere that it's easy to get things screwed up, and
It is.
so I changed them back. But because I've got the one system that's got a 128 SSD, it's never been a problem. Never redirected anything. I've had a laptop with, 256 SSD and had it for 10 years and for everything. So, it really, I guess, depends on how much you big video guys are in a different world. You need different systems.
Next time I get a chance to configure a machine to do that stuff, I'll walk through that and show you guys how I do it. I prefer to do it manually, but there is a way to do some settings where most of that stuff will go where you're telling it. But some things that do hidden, like your app data percent folder, where all that hidden stuff is, that wants to go to C. That too can be changed. And I'll go through that sometime when we set a machine up to walk it. But let me go back over to this machine because I want to look at some more. We've looked at one, we've kind of defined a price, but we need to keep our options open. So this is one possibility. It's got a 1 terabyte hard drive and 128 gig SSD. It's a little slim on RAM, but it could be upgraded. But for the price, for $50 off, it's not bad. Like I say, change one thing changes everything. So I'm going to keep this up as an option. I'm not going to lose it. So I'm going to hold down the control key. I'm going to bring up another rendition of this, and I'm going to go back to desktops. I'm going to go price low to high. And this time I'm going to look at processors because I'm always curious to see who's coming out. A couple of Threadrippers, and they're expensive. There's also 5 Ryzen computers. These are Ryzen 7s. There happens to be 3. The Ryzen 3, there happens to be one of the Ryzen 3, but there is a i9 in here, one of them. So let's just go look at the Ryzen 7 first. And lo and behold, for $800, here's an HP. Over the Christmas holidays, this was like $200 off. Last, probably 2 weeks ago, this was $100 off. This is still a good price for the product. It's got Radeon graphics. It's not NVIDIA, but it's dedicated. So you got 4 gig video. You've got a Ryzen 7. It's not the fastest Ryzen, but I mean, you got 8 cores, 16 threads. And I know it's more than what she needs, but let's take a look at it. A Ryzen 7, 16 gigs of memory, and 1 terabyte hard drive. Now, what I don't know, as I look at this and read about these specs, there's supposed to be a socket on that motherboard for an M.2. I'm familiar with this because I've looked this up and I've seen a picture of the motherboard. And according to the specs for this model, the M.2 socket is on that board. Now, if that's the case and I've got 90 days, I'm willing to look at it, pop the lid and see. If you guys are interested, I'll get one of those and we'll look at it up here next week and find out for ourselves. Anybody interested? Nobody? Bummer. We'll do it in 2 weeks. Yeah, you can watch it online. You watch it online live, then you have the advantage of being able to play it back later. Yes, David, you have a comment?
So Gil and I have been talking about...
Is that mic on?
So Gil and I have been talking about a problem that I have. that kind of impinges upon this because I may be building something, and maybe you can find out what you want in that respect. The backstory is that my wife, who's back in college for the third time, in fact, she's about to graduate in a couple of weeks.
Is she a professional student?
No, she had advanced degrees in biomedical engineering and petroleum engineering, neither of which did she ever work one day in. And she's been working in a real nice interior design firm for 10 years or so, and she decided she had to get that ASID behind her name.
Well, that's a good idea.
So, American Society of Interior Designers. And there's only one school in this region whose degree counts towards certification for their, and that's the Art Institute of Houston. But so 2 years ago, we bought her one Asus laptop that seemed to fit the bill, and then last year we upgraded to a better Asus laptop, but it was having some problems recently with rendering. She has a bunch of, like, AutoCAD is the least of the problems, but she has a bunch of applications that, like, SketchUp and
she needs a workstation graphics card.
Well, it has to be a laptop to start off with, because she has to be able to take it to school. And they've talked about a gaming laptop. Well, this Asus that we have it's got pretty good specs on it, and it does have 32 gigs of RAM, and it had a NVMe M.2 processor on the motherboard that was 500 gigs. And we thought that was plenty of space, but it's not. And it was choking, and she was having to go use my dad's iMac with 64 gigs of RAM, which worked just fine. But anyway, so I thought, well, I'll just buy a 1 terabyte NVMe and stick it in there. The only problem is that laptop only has one place where you can plug in a drive, and it's the little PCIe interface that kind of drive needs. So I thought, well, I'll get an external box, just like,
Easier said than done.
Yeah, and that just does not work with NVMEs. First of all, NVMEs draw a lot of power, and currently there just are not that many. There are no boxes out there for sale, external boxes. So what you have to do is buy or build a desktop whose motherboard has
2 slots.
At least one slot there. Now,
Yep.
you can get some daughter cards, some plug-in PCIe 4-channel cards that will allow you to put NVMEs on them.
Yep.
And I bought one from Micro Center and just could not get, and took the NVMe SSD out of my wife's laptop, put it in one slot, and put the new 1 terabyte in another slot, and just could not get the Samsung software to recognize one or the other at the same time. And after much discussion with Samsung, it turns out their software just won't do that. So I'm going to have to use a Cronus or something like that to make a bootable clone. But so I've been looking at what can I build, because I've been wanting to build a new Windows machine to start off with. Well, so there are 2 ways to go. Either build just the cheapest thing that will do the work and stick it in a case that I already have that has a good power supply that'll already work, and that'll run me just a little under $400. MSI makes a motherboard that's got 2 slots NVMe M.2 slots on it that I think it was $164 yesterday. And the problem right now is RAM. RAM's prices have skyrocketed because of people mining Bitcoins. And I mean, it's famously skyrocketed. And the processor, I can get by with a processor either going AMD or Intel. Well, on that MSI motherboard, that's a Intel motherboard, and I can get by with a processor that's about, I have to look it up, but I think it was 229 or something like that.
Well, see, I'd say, first of all, the machine you're going to build, are you going to build a machine that's a single purpose to accomplish this one task, or are you trying to build a machine that'll have a life of its own when it's done with that task?
Well, that's just it. I could build a single purpose machine for about $400 of stuff that I need to buy. But if I'm going to buy something better, I'm going to make it a server is what I'm actually going to do, a media server, and I'm actually going to go ahead and look for one that has 8 slots for RAM, so I can get 128 gigs worth of RAM in it. Yeah?
Robert.
Clone to a toaster
No.
from the laptop?
No. There are no NVMe toasters.
Can we get a mic over there?
To a rotating disk.
What?
You clone to a rotating disk.
No. I'm
You
not-
clone to a rotating disk.
When you do two-step things like that, you have too many problems. I'm not going to not going there. It's not in consideration.
You clone to a rotating disk, then change the
Not doing it.
SSD,
Not doing it.
and then you clone back.
No.
Well, I've
That's
done that.
Well,
There's no
to
problem.
to NVMe?
No, not
Okay,
not that. Just SSD.
All right, well, that's not an NVMe.
It's a good idea, Robert. It's a good idea.
Yeah, that would be, except for it's not going to work. I've read that too many places.
Now, if somebody wants to give that a shot, let's go back over and look at this computer. If you guys are interested, I'll get something like this in here and we can take a look at it and pop the lid and see if that socket is there. If this, for $800, has that socket, it can be upgraded. It can be upgraded later. It does not have to have an NVMe drive right now. But you know, that's the thing you have. When you build a computer, you have the option to do what you want. When you buy a computer, you have to accept that some of your options are going to be limited. For example, if we were looking at this motherboard, I'm not going to take time to pull it up, but this motherboard only has one slot for one video card. And the only other slot in there is for a single lane card. So if we wanted to put something that required a 4-lane slot, that motherboard doesn't have it. This would be a single purpose computer. But if the M.2 socket is on there for $800, not bad. So there's always a trade-off. And the question is, if I build a computer, am I going to be able to buy the video card? Video cards are getting kind of expensive because it's cryptocurrency. And talking about that cryptocurrency mining, did you guys hear or read about the supercomputer they were using in Russia to do crypto mining? Y'all didn't hear about that?
No.
Yeah, they got arrested. So they never did say how far they got or what it went to. And I also heard, I believe it was Iceland or New Zealand, more people now are mining cryptocurrency, and they're using more energy for that than they are for powering their houses. So they're having to increase their electrical grid capacity, which I don't get it. I don't get it. But I wanted to mention this. This is a machine that has a possibility. Now, the other option is if we go back over and take a look at a laptop. John, you got a comment?
Just one note here. This exact computer that you're selling, that you're talking about right here, I don't know how much of an aversion you have to refurbs, but Micro Center has those on that thing, exact same computer on sale for $550 right now.
Better deal. What's the return on it?
11 days.
I'm sorry?
What's the return on it? 11 days.
Oh, I don't know.
What's the restocking fee?
I have no idea. I just just stumbled across it here.
I think it's about 20%.
Well,
We'd have to check it and see. This, if we scroll down on the right side here on the bottom, it will show and says 2-year warranty, free technical support, and right there, 90-day return policy. That's worth $100 to me. Because if I don't like it, I'll send it back. On the surface, it looks like a pretty good deal. And if that socket's there, but this is HP. This laptop is HP, but they took the stinking socket out. Now, if I go query this laptop at, say, Crucial says I can put an M.2 in there. But according to what we've read, the only way I'm going to know is when I pop the lid on the back. And when this hits 6 months, I will pop the lid and eyeball it for myself. And if that socket's not there, then I'm going to go tears in my beer. But at $800, it was still a good deal for the money. Change one thing, though, changes everything. Yes, David?
Okay, a couple things. First of all, if you buy it with your American Express card, you can get 2 years more warranty.
You cannot
for
use
free.
American Express at
Well,
Costco.
not at Costco, but I mean elsewhere.
They used Costco, I think it was last year.
Yeah, no, but if you buy something elsewhere with your... Another thing is, no matter what we're going to build or buy right now, it's going to, starting about 2 years from now, be way out of date because our systems will be completely different due to this Intel vulnerability that was, the Spectre and Meltdown vulnerabilities that were revealed a couple of months ago. But, these motherboard manufacturers are waiting like crazy for Intel and AMD to
Release
have
microcode.
new designs that, and they're, at first they're just going to have Band-Aids, but there will be new from the ground up designs. So that's something to consider.
Brings up a good point because there's some things going on with Windows itself that we need to talk about. Now, if I'm going to build a computer, I've built a Ryzen. Lou has built a Ryzen. This machine we're looking at on these specs is a Ryzen. I wouldn't build anything less than a Ryzen. But the next machine I'm going to build, I'm planning on building a Threadripper, and I'm putting the parts together for it now. And I'm going to do some videos on the components. For a while, over the holidays, you couldn't get your hands on a high-performance power supply. 1,000 watts, nobody had them at any price. And then they were selling them for twice the price they actually cost. I got one, I paid for it on Amazon, bought it from Amazon on Amazon. When they had it on sale and didn't have it in stock, I waited 45 days. And as soon as that got delivered, they were out of stock of them again. And I got a real good price on it. But I couldn't believe high-performance power supplies, it's 1,000 watts because of what I may be doing with that Threadripper. I couldn't believe I couldn't get my hands on a power supply, which means somebody's building computers. And if it's this cryptocurrency stuff, it's kind of annoying. But it may be a reason right now to buy a computer instead of building a computer. So this is one computer I want to show you. I want to go back to the specs because if we go zoom out of this particular computer that, as you said, was less expensive at Micro Center, this is the lowest price of an AMD Ryzen 7 at Costco. Now, another machine that catches my eye, I know it's $1,500, but I'm going to zoom in on this. This is a CyberPower, and I just want to mention it because this has an 8 gig NVIDIA GTX 1070 Ti. That's an expensive video card. I wouldn't buy that video card by itself, but I can buy it right there in a computer. And it's got a 2 terabyte hard drive and a 240 gig SSD. That's a lot of computer for $1,500. I wouldn't go buy that video card. I probably think it's a ridiculous price, but it's in that machine. So for $1,500, I don't have to do anything to that. I can use it as is. I'm going to scroll down here and see what this is. This is a 1700X, so, speed is fine, but I'm still 8 cores, 16 threads, 16 gigs of RAM. It's DDR4. Now it says there's a 240 gig SSD. I don't know if this is an NVMe. I don't know. That's a machine I'd be willing to try to take a look at. It's also got Windows 10 Pro. I'm a fan. I prefer Pro over Home, but it wouldn't be a deal killer. For less than $50, you can get a license and change it. Like Dwayne said, I don't want to be tech support. So there's a couple of options. There's a couple of desktops. That would do for $1,500. I think the one for $700 would do the job. But you'd still have to add an SSD to it. Now I think what we ought to do is go over and take a look at a laptop. Now, I have a friend, Melinda. She's interested in a laptop. She's given me some very specific specs of things that she wants. And as I always say, you change one thing, changes everything. She's got to have a touch screen. Everything she does is touch screen. She doesn't know what a mouse is anymore, she said. So I said, well, we have a couple of options if we look at a laptop now, or if we wait, because all this new stuff from CES is coming out. We're probably going to see it hit the ground about mid-April, probably May. And this new version of Windows is coming out. So May might be a good time. So let me bring this up again. I'll hold down the control key. Let's go look at a couple of laptops right quick, because there's some things with Windows I want us to get to. Now let's go look at a laptop, and again, I'm going to reverse it.
Stop.
You said Windows is coming out with a new version in May?
There's going to be a new series of laptops in May. There's going to be a Spring Creators Update that I would expect probably about the same time. So I want to talk about the versions of Windows in a minute, but I want to finish this about the laptops.
Yeah, and I have a question also.
Is it about the laptops?
No.
It's about Windows?
Yes.
Okay, because there's something I want us to get cleared up with the Windows cache as well. So I've gone low to high, and I get through the blah, 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 and I'm going to start with, again, I'm partial. I want to see a realistic processor, but for Melinda, she's got to have a touch screen. So that splits it in half if there has to be a touch screen. I don't need a touch screen, but that's what she wants. And then I'm going to say, I'm going to go down to the screen size. She wants a minimum of a 15-inch. She'd like bigger. For the features, she's probably going to be looking at a 15-inch. Because, and I don't know why, first of all, she doesn't need a 4K, but I think she might benefit from a stylus. So that opens up the possibility that this 15-inch touchscreen laptop could end up being a flip screen. So I'm just going to breeze through these real quick. I'm going to look. I'm going to get down here to probably about $1,000. And again, you change one thing, it changes everything. If you change the price, here is an Asus, $900. Here's a Dell for $900, $100 off. Now see, that's got the right specs. 15-inch screen, 16 gigs of memory, 512 gig SSD. That's something that I would think, Dwayne, that would be perfect for your wife. In my opinion, if I'm going to put an SSD in a computer, I want 512 gig minimum. That's a good place to be. Now, if I build a machine, I'm going to put in a 1 terabyte. But if I'm buying a machine, I can live with 512. Yes, sir. We get a mic over there? Let me flip over. Now,
It's my daughter, not my wife.
I'm sorry, your daughter.
Okay, but
I can't keep track of the women in your life.
I know, there's just so many. I continually look at the Inspiron because I'm probably going to buy an XPS for myself when the new one comes out in the next few months. But the Inspiron is an alternative, is pretty good, except all the reviews say the screens just suck.
Yeah.
They're just washed out. They it's a good machine. It's got great components and everything, but you just can't see it, and that kind of turns me off on the Inspirons.
Well, something to think about, again, where you're buying it from. And this is something I found out people were interested in with the laptops. You think the more money you spend on a laptop, the better the screen you're going to get. For example, people asked about this HP Envy. Who makes the display, and how bright was it? And I said, it's funny. I'd like to be able to turn it up brighter, but if I could, I would turn it back to where it's at. So that means it's okay like it is. If it costs more, I would expect a better display. Now, this only does 300 nits. A lot of times you want to see something like 500 nits, but that's going to cost more money. And I don't know why, but the 15-inch they're doing 4K, that's like Nick, Lou, Andrew have. You're not seeing 4K on a 17-inch screen. I don't know why. But again, I would think if you had a higher quality display, or excuse me, you get higher resolution, higher quality display. I don't know that for a fact unless I interrogate. So this is a possibility. You got 3 months to look at it and interrogate it. You know, I like the processor on it. That's an 8550. That's 4 cores, 8 threads. But if I want more, this is my deal with Melinda. I can show her 2 laptops now that could do the job. But if we wait until that other time frame, this new stuff that's coming out after CES, and the things we've been promised, longer battery life, better screens, and I would expect maybe the newer version of Windows, which we'll get to. Not that it's going to be that big of a deal. It's got 16 gigs of memory. It's a 512 gig SSD. And if you look at the size of this thing, it doesn't tell it, but that's an M.2 drive that's in there. What I don't know, if it's an NVMe. The machine could be interrogated and we could find out. That's one possibility for $900. So if I go back and say $900 for that one, here's a Dell Inspiron for $950. You know, I'm thinking, okay, what's the difference? 4 gig video versus 2 gig video. But this has a 256 gig SSD, whereas this other one here has a 512 gig SSD. I'd take the 512. So if we go on down, now right here, here's the Lenovo Flex. There's $1,000. 15-inch screen, 16 gigs of memory, 512 gig SSD. If that pen is worth that, that's a possibility. 2 gig of NVIDIA, the 940. I'd rather it be the 950, but so be it. It's dedicated. And this is something else that's going to be a part of the new Windows. You know, when you get a laptop that's got a dedicated or discrete video, you've actually got 2 videos in that system. Did you know by default it's not using that high-performant discrete dedicated video? By default, it's using the lower-end video. With Windows right now, you have to go in through every application, kind of like installing from a C to a D drive. You have to go through application by application, tell it to use that higher performance video. There's going to be a control, they claim, that's going to make that easier in this new update.
Save power?
Yes. They do that to save power. Remember that spec Intel had called the, was it Centrino? And everything was about, you know, saving that power, keeping that power low. Like Dwayne talked about, you know, the i7s were throttling down. Well, if they need to throttle down because we're not using it, that's fine. But if I'm going to render, then I want it to go. For example, if you want a computer that saves power, you buy an Intel. They have longer battery life. If you don't mind shorter battery life, AMD is going to have shorter battery life because they're not trying to conserve power like the Intels are. It's a balance, price and performance. So that's one of those little tidbits. So let me go back over to this one. Now there was another one that I was going to show. Right here it is. This is an HP Envy. This is a 15. There's also a 17-inch that's $1,000. This is $200 off. So let me go add the 17-inch to it. Change one thing, changes everything. Now it says there's 4 of them. And I should have just shown, and I'll do that. I'll just show those 17-inch ones. I wouldn't take that first one. That's an old AMD processor. I wouldn't do the second one. So I would look at these other 2. Okay, this one for $1,000 is $300 off. This one for $1,100, 4 gig NVIDIA. That's a 1080 resolution. This one for $1,000 is a better deal than the one for $1,100. I'll show you why. And again, change one thing changes everything. I'm good with the video. It's a 4 gig NVIDIA MX150. Here's the 3 things you've got. Touchscreen number 1, Windows 10 Pro number 2, and not that it matters, but Office 365 is there for a year. Now, if that goes back up to $1,300, then the $1,100 one's a better deal. But right now, that's a pretty darn good deal for $1,000. Again, what I don't know and what I would expect, it's probably been neutered, and I'll bet you the socket's been taken off. There's a hard drive in there, 7,200 RPM. It's a laptop drive. If it's like this one, they've removed the M.2 socket, which is really annoying. But if I bought it direct, configured it the way I want, we go from $800 to $1,650. I'm not willing to pay $1,650. So there's a couple of options for a desktop. There's 4 options for a laptop. And again, you know, at Costco, you change one thing, changes everything. If the price changes or the specs change, they could pull those, be gone tomorrow. The new stuff's going to be coming out. If she needs something right now, those are some options. But if she can wait till May, it should be a whole new animal. Now I want to get into Windows. Can we go to Windows?
Can I ask my question first?
Yes, ma'am. Go right ahead.
Because it has to do with Windows.
Yes, ma'am.
I updated Windows 10 in December, updated 2, and in a month, it worked fine. But a month later, I could not boot to anything except guest. All my administrative accounts had disappeared. How do I get so I can boot it back up for real? Is there anybody else who has had any problem like that?
I haven't seen that particular problem. I wish you'd email me that so I could have had some time to done some
Okay,
research
well,
and vet it.
I can give you I can email the whole thing to you and,
And I'll look into it because
Yeah.
I have not seen that. The problem that Ed had was after Microsoft did their updates, and I'm wondering if the updates must have given you some grief. I've never heard of it messing up the accounts though.
yeah, and apparently Windows 10 has no guest account available, so, well, you would think so,
Well,
but anyway,
there's a
it wiped
guest-
out the administrative accounts. I can't figure out how to get back in. Do you know how to boot up from a cold start into the command mode, CMD, in Windows 10?
Off the top of my head, that's not something I was prepared to talk about.
Does anybody? Because F8 does not work.
No, remember they took F8 out to make Windows boot faster. We have to put F8 back in.
Well, since I can't boot up, I can't get it back in, but
But I'm just saying, Microsoft took that key out.
yeah, they sure did. Microsoft in the Galleria. Where in the Galleria? That's a big place. Is it in the, is it in the,
No, it's not near the Apple Store. It's called Microsoft Store in the Galleria on the second floor. I usually park underground parking and then just walk up.
but is it on the part that's got the skating rink in it?
Yes.
Okay, on the second floor. Okay.
No, that's parking.
Joe was supposed to be here today, but he may not make it. He had to go do blood work this morning, so he could have probably answered your question. There's a lot of other stuff I've been working on. Yes, Ed? Let's get a mic over here for Ed.
I got one. Thank you. Just reading it's on.
In Windows 10, go to the Start, go to the Power button, and and then press down the Shift key and click on Restart, and that will give you the option to select how you want the computer to start up in boot.
Did you get that, Mel? Repeat what you said.
Okay, go to Start, click on the Start menu,
Mel, can you hear him?
then down at the bottom, there's a power icon. Press the Shift key, and then, I'm sorry, press on the power icon, then press the Shift key and click on Restart.
I tried that, did not work. But then I couldn't get to the start menu.
Can we get a mic back there on her so we can hear? Otherwise, folks online can't hear what she's saying.
Yes, I did try that, but I was not at the start menu because I couldn't get there. Because when I clicked guest, I couldn't get in. So, but I could find a power shutdown, and I tried that trick on that, but it did not work.
You did try
Yes, sir.
holding the shift and then
Yes, sir.
clicking on
Yes,
restart.
uh-huh.
I don't
Thanks,
know.
though.
If you'll email me on that, I'll be happy to take a look into it. Okay, there's probably about 4 versions of Windows. There's Windows Home, there's Windows Pro, there's a Windows talking about Polaris that could be coming down the pike. And in between Windows Home and Windows Pro, there's a Windows S coming out. And they're looking at Windows being like building blocks. Y'all remember that tablet Joe had up here about a year ago when we were over at Fairhaven? And he couldn't get an application to install, and he forced it? I think that was some precursor to like Windows S. But I'm just working off of memory. Windows S is only supposed to work with the Microsoft Store. It will not work with Win32 apps. It'll be locked down. Now, we have an update coming to Windows. Some are calling it Redstone. It's also being called the Spring Update. And that Spring Update hopefully is going to solve and add some more opportunities, let's say. The biggest thing I like is that you're going to have access to being able to control multiple GPUs. So for laptop users, that'll be a boon, a way to configure it. With this last fall Creators update, we went from build 1703 to 1709. This next update is not going to have 4 digits. It looks like 5 digits. And I've got, if I can go over here to Builder Buy to the talking points, I think I've got a link up on it. Bless you. Redstone, build 17069, and it's available to the Windows developers. 17093, that's where the multi-GPU controls are going to go. That's on Extreme Tech. And also Tech Radar. Windows 10 Spring Creators Update may be its first big patch of 2018. Now, all this to keep in mind, I would expect to come out, and they're not really saying, but I would expect this about the 1st of May because the Microsoft Build Conference is going to be May 7th through 9th. So, you know, the trade shows is usually when you have the technology. So I would expect that Spring Creators Update to occur about that time frame when they'll announce it. And we should see it shortly thereafter. But I wanted to mention that because the face of Windows may be changing. Instead of all this stuff we've had in the background in the past to be able to run our old applications, they're getting ready to shut that off. So you got Windows Home, you got Windows Pro, you got Windows S that's going to be the building blocks. And then you got this next version of Windows that may be coming out in 2019 that may be some form of this Windows S. And Windows S is based on Windows 10 Pro. And I've got a link up on Microsoft where we can look at Windows 10 release information for the current branch and build history, but also compare Windows additions. But I've got a link in here to Microsoft Windows 10 S, streamlined for security and superior performance. I won't click on them. I'll just say there they are. You can take a look at them. But it's something to be thinking about as we go down the pike. Now, for stuff we can do that we can use, we can think about right now. Y'all remember? Let me first, before I forget this. You mentioned PowerQuest a while ago, or that program to clone your drive with. Y'all remember Gene Barlow? Yeah. Gene Barlow's still out there, and he's still doing presentations, and he's still working for that company. Was it PowerQuest? Acronis. Well, how could I forget? They changed so. Anyway, he's offered to do a presentation for us, but I wanted to talk to you guys first and see if you're interested. Now, if we do it, I don't know if we could stream it online. If we could, we'll have to figure out some way to allow the pricing for those of you that participate with the meeting. But I would like to see Gene Barlow again. It's been a couple of years. Are y'all interested? Okay. I'll mention it to Gene. I'll contact him. He's changed his domain name. I asked him why. Long story short, somebody wanted to buy his domain name. I said, that's a good reason to sell it. They offer you enough money for it, absolutely. So he's got a new domain name. similar to what he had, but he's still doing what he was doing. Remember, Gene Barlow is Mr. IBM, so I'll let him know about that. Okay. At one time, when Gene was doing his presentations, the last time we talked to him, when he got ready to make his presentation, his camera didn't work. Do y'all remember that? Yeah. It was a USB camera. And remember, Joe talked about how to take care of that. Have y'all ever plugged in something USB and it not work? How you feeling, Tommy? Good to see you today. Did you bring your daughter? Good. Where is she? Somewhere around. Tell her I said hi. Tell her I said Happy Valentine's. Thank you. Do y'all remember how Joe fixed that problem? No. Okay, there's 3 or 4 different ways. I can show you how you can do it with Windows natively. There's also 3 different applications you can download that'll solve this. The problem is that cache. I don't know if that database cache can take 30 times or if it's 100 times. I don't know what the count is. But at some point, when you stick something in USB and unplug it, after so many times, it won't register anymore. So the easy way, not the easy way, the simplest way, and I'm going to, I'll minimize all this. And I'm going to go to the, let's see, is it this PC? Yep. Okay, I went to this PC, I right-clicked, I said Properties. I'm going to go to Device Manager. If I were on a desktop, I'd bring this up a different way with a different keyboard shortcut. Now, if you'll notice, I'm going to go to the bottom of all my USB stuff. And I see my controller, composite device. This laptop has 3 ports. That's all fine and dandy, but I'm going to go up here to View, and I'm going to say Show Hidden Devices. Let me zoom in on that. View, Show Hidden Devices. And when I do that, you see all this stuff that's grayed out? All that grayed out stuff are things that I have plugged in. That list grows so big, and then eventually that stuff won't load. But this is not the only place where that stuff is at. It might be under storage volumes. You see all those grayed out? It might be under other devices. It might be under disk drives. Here we are. Look at all those disk drives, SanDisk. The point I'm showing you, all these different settings need to be deleted. Now, I can, from here, go through and delete these one at a time. Kind of annoying, kind of slow, but it can be done. We'll zoom back out. I'm going to close that. Now back. Do what? Were you in Device Manager? Yes, I was in Device Manager. And to get to Device Manager, because I have my icons, I do it from a desktop differently because I use a keyboard shortcut. I right-click on this PC Properties. Once I have this information up, I click on Device Manager. That's one way to do it. That's the slow way to do it, but you don't have to download anything. Up on Build or Buy, I've got a link to 3 different applications that tell how to do this. And I've also got some information here from Kingston on M.2 drives if you're interested to know how the keys work. SysNative, NurseSoft, Drive Tools, and SourceForge, USB Oblivion. Any one of those, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, SysNative will tell you about how to do this. I'll hold down the Control key and bring that up. And you can walk through this process that we've just talked about, but you want to be sure you get everything. So if we go back over here, I've got 3 links: NurseSoft, USB DevView, Drive Tools for Windows, and on SourceForge, USB Oblivion. We've used a lot of stuff from NurseSoft before. I'll hold down the Control key and bring up NurseSoft. And that gives you some idea of what you're looking at, because you've got to clear that cache out. and it'll go in there and show you, and then you can delete it and be done with it and move on. This is one of those things you want to be prepared for beforehand and not wait till after the fact, because then you're going to say, okay, is there something wrong with my USB device? And I had a 64 gig memory stick die on me. I plugged it into 3 different computers, and I could see the light, it would flick, and I would get the little icon down there that says you can disconnect, but it never showed a volume for the disk. It never fully activated that drive. So whatever I had on that disk is gone. So I had to get a new one out and keep going. But while I was doing that, I got to thinking, this cache problem, I wonder if that's my issue. It wasn't. I just had a dead drive. But I got to thinking about it. We need some way to take care of this. And here are 3 different applications, and one with documentation that talks about the process. So you can use the device manager, but you got to go through and figure out all that stuff and delete it. Or you can use one of these applications, and it'll show all that stuff, and it'll delete all those hidden settings. Be done with it. Helpful? Now, someone's going to ask about this next week, and I'm going to say, I remembered it then, but I don't remember it right now. Robert, you got a question? Let's get a mic on Robert.
Where is the limit on the cache? Is it in the operating system or is it in the USB device? Where is the cache that has a limit?
Ask that question.
Where is the limit? Who has the limit? Where is the cache? Is it in the operating system or is it in the USB device itself?
It's in the operating system. And I don't understand why that limit is there. I find it rather odd in this day and time. We've been using USB for a very long time.
Yeah.
But you're limited on how many times you can plug something in.
So you're saying essentially you can plug in, just use 100 for illustration purposes, you can plug in 100 different USB devices, but not the 101st one. Is that what you're saying?
You take one and plug it in 100 times.
Ah.
And the 101st time you plug that one in, it might not recognize.
And you can delete the previous 99 installations in through Device Manager or whatever, and
then
just keep on going. Huh?
And then it'll work again.
Well, that is amazing.
Yeah.
Wonderful feature.
It's a cache feature, and that cache gets full. So
Well, but why in the world would you be caching that I have seen this device 99 times before? Who needs to know that?
I agree. I agree. If it's supposed to make it quicker to set up, when we hit whatever that wall is, whatever the number is, whether it's 30 times or 100 times, why? Yes, sir.
There are tons of tables within the operating system called Windows. All right? And this is table-driven system. All these tables have limits. You reach a point and you're dead. The table's full. Now, it's not the best design because it should automatically flush, but it doesn't. Okay? That's a programming problem.
It's kind of like the temp files don't flush either.
Well, I can't, I didn't do the programming. But the point is, they're all limits. 64, 128, 4096. They're all limits.
That's a good point. How many
all
of
magic
you?
words.
How many of you use Notepad? I use Notepad extensively because it's ASCII text. It'll work anywhere all the time. Even Notepad has a limit. At one time, it was 64K. 64K is not much.
Okay.
So that's something to think about. Now I got one more thing I want to share with you. I've done a video on this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Anybody have any trouble getting their updates to run? And I had emailed Andrew about this because we'd solved his, but I was concerned we might not have.
You mean Windows update?
Getting your Windows updates to run. It looks like it'll churn, but it won't finish. Okay. What you need to do is run the Windows Update Troubleshooter.
Oh, I finally got it.
Did you run the Windows Update Troubleshooter?
Don't remember.
Don't remember. Well, if you will run, it's something you have to download. When you run the Windows Update Troubleshooter, there again is a database that gets cleared out, gets wiped out, and then once that gets cleaned, then it'll start all over again and everything will work.
Right.
I had it on a machine that I had a problem with. I had it on another machine that I didn't think I had a problem with that I did. Once I cleared it out, lo and behold, I had some updates and they automatically installed. Otherwise, they sit there and they keep trying to download. Even if you have bandwidth, you're taking up bandwidth. It's annoying. So there's always some way to resolve a problem. Now, yes, Tommy. Can we get a mic on Tommy? Well, it depends on your perspective.
All right.
I have Windows 7, and I'm running Windows, downloading the updates now, and it's taking a long time. It's up to 52% complete.
I wonder if it's our connection here, because we have good connection, we have good wireless, but I wonder if it's because of the same issue that maybe it's downloading but it doesn't finish, and I wonder if you need to run that Windows Update Troubleshooter. Clear all that out and start fresh.
Okay.
Has it been doing this a lot, Tommy?
No, this is the first time, but it's just taking a long time.
We got a slow connection today?
It says downloading 69 update.
Did anybody test the connection today?
Yeah,
40 megabit? 40 megabit's not bad. I'm on the wired connection, so I have no idea. Oh, well, it depends on what his adapter is. You got a point. It could be your wireless. How old is that laptop?
Oh, about 8-10 years.
Okay, so you may be on like wireless in. Wow.
You have to buy a new machine.
We can get you a different wireless adapter that'll give you a faster connection. I'll look into that.
It says 53% complete.
53%?
It's getting there.
It's getting there. It's just taking a long time. Well, I've got a video up on YouTube about the Windows Update Troubleshooter. If you will Google Windows Update Troubleshooter, it'll take you to a Microsoft page, and you can download that file. And when you run that, it'll clear all that stuff out, and it'll start fresh. Let that go, if it will, to keep running. But if at the end of the meeting it still hasn't finished, then we might need to run that Update Troubleshooter. Yes, Robert?
Several months ago, I ran into the problem with Windows 7 that it wouldn't update. And so I just quit trying. And months went by, and at one point, Windows said you'll have to reboot to install these changes or whatever, which was kind of strange because I hadn't done anything. And so it cured itself. But I have no idea why. So you ask if anybody's had trouble with that. Well, that's been my experience recently. And the last couple of Windows updates, I guess, I've just ignored them, especially since the Spectre and whatever the other one is, problems have come out, and I've heard that Microsoft is breaking machines with the updates. I don't choose to be broken. So I just, the last 2 months, I have not done Windows Update because I don't want them fiddling with my machine.
Well, that's a luxury that on Windows 10 we don't have. On Windows 7, you did have that luxury. And according to what they said, there's a bit that's supposed to be set by your antivirus software that if it's not set, they wouldn't update. Thanks for being with us, Ed. We'll see you next week. And tell Nick we're sorry we missed him. Ed. Tell Nick we're sorry we missed him. Okay. See you next week. So these updates, it's a cat and mouse, catch-22. It's annoying, but it's something we have to learn to live with. I think Ed's probably did the most wrangling with that, where it messed up his machines, and he just said, I refuse to give up. Fortunately, he had clones. He was able to restore his machines, but that's annoying. So, Tommy, is it still running?
It's still running.
Okay, good. I think on that video on YouTube,
55%.
it's where?
It's up to 55%.
Slow, but it's happening. If I'd have known ahead of time, I could have looked into a wireless adapter for you. I might have one that's faster. Do you have a USB 3 port on your computer? Or do you know? Probably not. Just USB 2. I like to think where the technology's at. I might have something faster. I'll have to look into it. When we get up here, my head's into getting set up, and that's... Oh, that's an idea, if we could run him wired. Okay, Tommy, next week when you get up here, if we don't do it today, next week, we'll hook you up with a wired connection because you can come in right off that switch. And that update will go like that. I haven't tested this lately, but we're able to get our stream up. Okay, now Jeannie
Cable to this?
has been working on a project, and I told you guys I was going to share with you what she had. Jeannie's planning on teaching English to some Chinese students, and I think I had that up. Nope, here it is. VIP Kid, VIP Kid. I've never heard of it. These are the tech requirements for the device. Okay, the device, desktop, laptop, you got that. A camera. Now, because if you were on a laptop, you would already have a camera. But since you're on a desktop, you're going to need to get a camera. The camera I would probably recommend for what they're talking about, because you're going to be streaming, would be like the Logitech. The Logitech webcam, I think it'll do 720. I think they've got one that does 1080. There's also a Microsoft camera that can do, again, the same resolutions. So I'll look at those two and I'll send you a link to them. As far as a headset with a mic, let me think about that. There's several options, because you've got to be able to hear yourself. And if you've ever captured, this will be easy to understand. You can't listen to yourself and the source at the same time, otherwise you get an echo. That's why you've got to have the headphones. You can't listen to this through speakers. So that's why you've got to have a headset. So let me think about the headset. Now, minimum system requirements, the operating system, 7, 8, 10, you're good to go with that. The CPU, an i3, an Intel i3 or above. I think the machine you've got right now has a phenome in it, so it would probably be equivalent to an i3. It should do the job. Memory, I think your machine had 8 gigs of RAM, so you're good to go with that. Flash, that's something you download. It has to be always updated. Now, here's the kicker. Your internet connection at home, do you have DSL or do you have cable? Or do you know? Are you on Comcast or are you on AT&T UVerse?
I'm on Direct TV.
Okay, you're on Direct TV. That means you have AT&T.
Yes, I'm AT&T.
For your internet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's ADSL. What I would suggest is you need to find out what your connection speed is. And I'm going to give you a URL that you're going to type in, and what you're looking at is your download and your upload. So you'll be looking at a combined speed. Go to testmy.net. Test, T-E-S-T, my, M-Y.net. Testmy.net. Run that test. It'll tell you what your speed is.
Okay.
Now, they say 20 megabit, but they don't tell you what your upload speed needs to be. Your upload speed is more crucial than your download speed. Because you're on AT&T, you're probably going to have, are you on the default, whatever the lowest is?
I have no idea.
Test it.
Okay.
Test it and it'll tell you. Because even after you do all this, you'll still need to connect with them and see if they can see you, if you can do the stream. For example, you can stream 720 with a 5 megabit connection. But if you're going to do 1080, you've got to have at least a 20 megabit connection.
Okay.
And that's the upload. You're not going to get an upload speed of 20 megabit with UVerse. Your upload speed with them is probably 5. Your download might be 20, but run that testmy.net and it'll tell you what your speed is.
Thank you.
So I'm going to send you a link to a couple of different cameras, and I'll also do some research on some headphones that I think might work for you. You have a sound card in that system. It's an audio on the motherboard. It'll do what you want.
Oh, okay.
So let me look into that. So run this test, and then I will look for a couple of cameras for you, because it's, one thing changes everything. The price, that could dictate what you need. And I'll look for some headphones, and I'll send you a link to that.
Thank you.
I've been wanting to know about this because I'm eager to see you follow through on this project.
Radar Chinese.
Well, I think it'll be a fun learning process. Who knows? They may invite you to come over there.
If they pay, I'll go.
If I agree, if they pay that, you'll go. Like I said, Build or Buy reaches people all over the world. We might start reaching people in China. That'd be cool. We don't do anything anybody want to censure anyway, I don't think. So, does anybody have any more questions today? There's some other news topics up on Builder Buy. I don't need to get into them. What I wanted to share with us, we talked a little bit about hardware, whether to build or whether to buy. And I can't believe I'm saying this. It may be a better idea to buy a machine right now than building. That's not what I'm going to do, but I'm just saying. And as far as laptops, there's some nice deals out, but change one thing changes everything. You might want to wait till May. I'll be curious, Dwayne, to see what you end up doing. Let us know. And I want to know the information you got, Mel, because I want to help you solve your problem on your computer. I haven't seen what you've had, but then again, I come here and a lot of things you guys have that I haven't seen.
Yeah, I have a, something for you to add to your buying or building.
What's
If you do end up getting a laptop, so many of them do not have CD drives now.
Right.
Can you give us some information, you know, not sometime along the way,
Sure.
on how to pick a CD drive? I don't need it right now, but just I'm giving you information for another subject in another session.
That's a little easier for me to do. If I'm looking for any kind of a drive like that, personally, I want a Blu-ray. I want to be able to play a Blu-ray, but I want to be able to burn a Blu-ray. So I would look for something with a Blu-ray. USB 2, USB 3, probably be the easiest.
I'm not interested in Blu-ray at all. I'm not even going to try and buy one of those things. I mean a Blu-ray, whatever it is, disc.
If all you want's a DVD, then, you know, I have things I like for on particular brands. I can go through and I would probably look at Newegg and see what they've got.
I
Yes,
just
Dwayne.
bought one for my granddaughter for Christmas. She's got a Dell XPS, and I just bought the USB, one of Dell's USB for about $25. $25, I think it was, for a
Yeah,
USB from Dell.
and since you've got a Dell, that might be easier. Either look at that or, like I said, go to Newegg and see what they've got. USB. Was it USB 2 or USB 3? Yeah. I don't know. I've seen both, so. But I'll do some looking and tell you what I like. For example, if I'm looking at a Blu-ray, I like LG. And I remember back when I recommended to Tom Tyner an LG, he said, I hate it. So. Anybody have any more questions? I've missed you guys. I'm glad we're here. And I want us to keep doing this as long as y'all are able and as long as we have the opportunity for a place to meet. I appreciate the folks at Chapelwood letting us meet up here. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Folks, thanks for coming. Thanks for joining us. And thanks for joining us online. We'll see you next week. Y'all have a great day and happy Thanksgiving.